I was out of my body and unattached to my body in front of me. And I saw the nurses and the anesthesiologist frantic trying to stabilize me. They I remember having to go into this another area where they were trying to use the intubate me at the time, and so intubation, where they had to breathe for me and had to resuscitate me. There was chaos. Finally got into the operating room and were working to stabilize me. And in that moment, it was like something crashed over, fell over from a tray because of the chaos. I was completely unattached, just watching and observing this chaos. And I had a hard time connecting to it that it was even me. And it felt like relief. It felt like release. And I had suddenly this next awareness from being in this operating room, this chaos, is them, putting the tube down for the intubation, which is a huge tube that goes in, down, and into the trachea, and then they use the breathing tube. That the whole room started, you know, to seem like it was getting brighter, and I was hovering over myself. And this time it was not, head over head, but it was as if I was head to toe and opposite and just looking down, not caring. And then it suddenly felt as though I was gently floating and as if I was also turning at the same time. And then just this gentle carrying of like being swooped or carried up. But at the same time, it didn't feel like I was moving anywhere. I recall like this pinprick of light in the room, and the entire room just seemed to be consumed by this light. And while like having this sensation of floating, and where the whole everything just went white. And that was the last thing that I remember while being in my body. The next thing that I recall was in this white light. It was just the hardest thing to describe because it had feeling and sound and sensation and warmth. It was like angelic singing with no singing, instruments with no instruments, a sound and a vibration that just permeated everything. And I have no words. It was a feeling of being like welcomed and comforted, this warmth. It felt like being under like a like water, but no, when it wasn't liquid, it was just this energy all around. And it was the most loving feeling I had ever felt. Like, if you can imagine feeling love here on earth and multiplied by a million and infinite, it's unlike anything that I've ever experienced before or even since. Maybe the closest has been, with the birth of my children, those, like even the passing of my parents, like this inexplicable kind of love. I had this awareness of this being before me. It's just I didn't have it. It didn't have a shape. It didn't have a face. It wasn't a loved one that I was familiar with, but I was aware of a presence, and it was translucent, see through, but just this feeling, and before me and in front of me, and realizing like, oh, what is this? Where am I? What's happening? What's going on? And this feeling of this being in front of me began to take greater shape, I guess, transform. And I don't even want to say transform because it always had this feeling of this being present with me throughout my entire process. But like through this being, and then like another, larger than life, this divine love. And I recognized it to be the Blessed Mother and her image, but I could only see not even the fullness of her entire physique, if you could even imagine that, but the maybe above her head and maybe to where her belly. It was so large, also translucent, and my main was the face and how soft and loving and welcoming. It was like a communication and a knowing without words of love, of being there, and but knowing that I wasn't supposed to be. I started to see like in her heart center this bluish flame, and as I like tried to focus on this area of her heart center, this blue flame that was like ever dancing, and it had one that was infused with red. And as I was focusing on this area of this red, that I began to see like through her and even larger than her, this other, again, translucent silhouette and translucent, etheric and an energy that is bestowed, a recognition of what they carry. And these two flames would intertwine and dance. There were no words spoken. And then through this heart center, I could see this like what seemed like an eternity away, but yet so close, was this white, this pure, like, and even as I try to describe it, I can hear like this piercing noise and this frequency that is so high pitched. It was so bright and shone through it. And it that I now call the God center of the universe, but at the time I did not know what that was. I had a feeling and an essence and awareness of it, but did not know what to call it. Because to me, in that place, I thought this is heaven, but what is that other place? What is that? And that was unfamiliar. Um, I did not want to return. I was home. I had made it. I was done, and I had no care, no thought, didn't nothing about my human experience whatsoever at that time. It just felt like I'm back, I'm home, I arrived. And there was this feeling of also knowing that I couldn't be or shouldn't be. And what I understood was about to occur is this explaining of that it was not my time, but that we're all given choice. And that in that moment is when there was like a healing process. Um, and it's hard for me to really discern which of these really came first because it's it was like a start of a life review, but a lot of trauma that began to come up, and not desiring to address it or anything, that through this was also a healing process, like being, I would call it like into this healing temple. And it's not like we would walk. It was the strange thing that everything was had soft edges, was also translucent. Space had purpose, but everything was alive. This energy was alive. The space was alive. It was like with thought and desire of intention that we would move, but this other, like the place would also move. Like it would arrive while we were also arriving towards it. So it was a this energy in this whole place that it was divinely intelligent, like even the space was alive. So it felt to me like I had achieved a certain like level of understanding and awareness, and then being made like given a choice again of like this, your body is viable. You your body is viable and you can still continue your mission. Every single one of us is here on a mission and a path to be able to accomplish things for our soul. And I was explained that I chose this. I wasn't told to do this, that no one is made to do anything against our will, that part of this process of acclimation and looking was understanding all of the events, and these are all potential. We hope that these pain events don't happen when they do, and that's why we're here, so that hopefully we can have enough soul awareness, knowing universal laws to make different choices. And so I was better prepared for understanding what incarnations are, why we're here, and what we're here to do. And so there was a whole process of that still there were four different groups of beings, one for healing, one for looking at past, one for preparation, and then a third that facilitated this big cosmic thing. What helped me make the decision to come back was shown like an image of our solar system, an image of our solar system within our galaxy within a system of a cluster of galaxies. So I was shown this grand scale, then all the way down to the microscopic, that if I did not choose to come into this life, I would remove a thread from this great tapestry that would unravel the whole thing. I couldn't if I wanted to. I would take time to get back and reintegrate into it, and or I could choose to allow in myself continue. So from that place, having that feeling I can now put into words. That's the feeling that I had, the awareness that had no words. And so when I came back, it was into that place of white. The Blessed Mother, I could still see this grand energy behind her, but it was my mom, standing beside her, and the Blessed Mother was holding my daughter that I had just had brought into this world, and it was this form of the Blessed Mother handing my mother my own daughter, and it was like my mom had stepped before me and was handing me my daughter. And in that moment, from mother to mother to mother to mother, it was this massive awareness. But it wasn't in that moment. That is when I had the panic set in. Oh my God, I had a baby. Not on the day that my daughter's born. Am I going to leave her motherless? This child. And then my son also, child, a child already 2.5, without his mother. And so it was that massive panic, and it felt like a violent ripping away. It wasn't this grand, celestial peace separation where, it was a panic, a violent separation where it felt like I was running and jumped out of my body. Or it's interesting I say that I jumped from that place like a 10-story building and into my body. It's like I crash landed into it. And the next awareness that I had is I could not move. I was still intubated. I felt like I was being buried alive. I had no mobility. I very rarely um, had this vague feeling of somebody cradling my head and then whispering into my ear that it was going to be okay. At the time, I thought it was a nurse, but I now know that it was not, that it was that divine energy saying, "It's going to be okay." I remember just one single tear just falling down the side, and then suddenly the intubation apparatus removed, and then I was settled, and they continued to have the surgery. I did have the surgery, but I was, in and out. I could feel like some physical sensations through it, but I had a very, very difficult time coming out of that episode. And again, and I don't know if they eventually gave me anesthesia. I really do not know. But again, that this episode was created from the epidural, where I was supposed to be awake. So I had a lot of difficulty coming out of this experience, so much so that in the recovery area after the surgery, they called my mom, and my mom just took one look at me and saw me, and she started to cry and said, "What happened?" And I couldn't answer her. Just all I could say is like, "Mama, I felt like I was like buried alive." And then it was that feeling. I remember just convulsing and my body trying to, I guess, reacclimate, come back online. And so that was my that was my near death experience.